guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to another video in this Patreon series. I think this is video 6, which is a bit crazy when we've really not made anything in metal yet, but we're getting there. A week or so ago I made this core and I was going to make another one for a video. This was just a trial, and it was sort of to give me some idea to make this pattern like. This is the piston pattern. If you can see this is a bit of imagination. You can see that this will be the inside of the pattern. It's got the 2 dots here for the bolt holes, or for the gudgeon journals, I think they're called, like the bosses, and the gudgeon pin goes through there, and it's got a taper on the top. That matches this taper on the top of this piston. And when we mould this, when this is moulded, it'll sink down inside and give us a gap all round, and a shape inside the piston that looks like that in reverse, and a shape on the outside that looks like this with these pieces on the edge. These are basically to facilitate pouring. One's going to have a riser and one of them's going to have a vent. Not a big deal there, and hopefully we're going to get a piston out of it. This of course is going to be cast in cast iron, and it's going with the other castings, which is pretty exciting. But I'm going to cast one just to make sure. This only goes one way, I think, which is a bit sad. Just to make sure that this actually works, and that it's not too thin in the wall and everything works out. I'm going to pour one this weekend using this pattern in the sand and this core sitting in the pattern, and I'm going to get some video of that, and that's what this video is all about. We're going to come home, we're going to measure the piston up, fettle it up, and have a good look at where and what it needs to be, and some of the measurements involved, and some of the calculations involved in making a piston pattern that is somewhat more modern perhaps, or a little bit more scientific, I hope, than 1922 style. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's go to the foundry. So Sunday morning, bright and early, or not so bright and early, up at the foundry. This is all a bit trial and error, and the basic steps all seem back to front. So before you comment on that, just, yeah, it's very easy to miss a step out, or to not think what you're doing. We've to come up with a problem here in that pattern's higher than the top of the box. So we're going to have to shuffle around and find another box there. That looks better. A little bit taller. And we forgot to put some talc or some parting powder on there so that it comes out easy. But we'll pick that up later. At least we got the box the right way up. We got some nice fine sand with the sieve over the top of the pattern, all over. And I'm just going to fill the box up with sand. Fairly big boxes. The cope and drag on this one's fairly solid, so it's fair bit of weight, and that's most of the problem with casting bigger castings, is the weight of this sand in the box. And cranes and things. Sand's a little bit dry there today. I think it hasn't been used for a couple of weeks. But dig a bit out of the bottom, it's probably all right. The sensible thing would have been to wet it down, but the guy next to me might have had some issues with that. Fair bit of sand in that box. Just make sure he's all nice and tight on top, but everything's in there. There's no real... This box has got pretty straight sides, so unless it's tight in there, you're going to find that it's going to fall out when you turn it over. We clean the top off so it sits nicely on a board, just with a straight edge. And a few little holes, so we're probably going to fill them in before we go to the trouble of turning it over. Get it nice and smooth on top, and then it's well supported all over. Give everything a bit of a clean up so we don't get sand everywhere when we turn it over. And we probably need a board on top, Emma. We need a board on top, board on top. Oh my gosh, don't forget, quick, let's find it. There we go, we remembered. And Bob's along to give us a bit of a hand, that's awesome. Flip it over, pretty heavy. We can see the bottom of the pattern there. And a little reminder that we need to put a thread in that so that we can lift it out, because we've forgotten until this point. Now, I think cross our fingers that actually comes out. And because we didn't put parting powder on it, what I'm going to do is lift it out now and just make sure it comes out before I put the top on. We'll give that a good blow off with the air and just make sure that everything's probably okay. Make sure there's no loose sand in there anywhere. And give it a dust off. So that the two halves don't actually stick together. This is something we probably should have done when we started, but we never. And we'll put him back in and just everything looks okay. And start work on the top half. That looks pretty good there. Time to blow him off and to put a board on top, open him up and see what we got. And let's lift it out all right again, nice and clean. Everything looks pretty good. We'll give him a blow off to keep the sand out again. Loose sand creates problems, turbulence and bad surface finish. And we'll try the core in and see how it fits. That sits in there beautifully like that, and that gives us a gap down each side, one for the metal to pour in and one for it to vent out. I think we're going to put it that way around with the gudgeons at each side, not like crossways. And that looks pretty good. Of course, we won't put that back in until we're ready to pour because it will absorb some moisture, and that's not a good thing. So a good idea to leave that out and put the mould together when you're ready to pour. Leaving it overnight with the core in the mould is probably not a good thing to do, I don't think. And just at the top there off camera, I'm cutting a couple of holes, one for the metal to pour in and one for it to vent out of. Not too big, fairly small tube there to do it. I think that's important, not to pour in too big a tube if you possibly can avoid it. Unfortunately, I got called away to do another job for someone and to talk, so I didn't get any real footage of this mould being poured or being broken open. But I haven't cut the sprues off, and I haven't taken the core out yet, so we're going to do that in the next part of the video when I get back home. I apologise for not seeing any actual metal being poured, but it did pour in one hole and then through the casting and back up the other one. I promise that, and we'll have a look and we'll see basically what we've got when we're done. So let's head back home and take some time to dissect this and see what we've ended up with. So here we go. Had survived the trip back. This core looks brown and fairly burnt, but it's had hot metal up against it. This shows the parts here. I'll give you some idea what these ears are for. This is where the metal flows through here and through and back, and there's a little bit of shrinkage in here, but no real shrinkage in here, so I'm pretty pleased about that. This all looks pretty good. The surface finish on top's a bit ratty probably. There are ways to fix that, but for the purposes of this I think we're going to live with it. And probably a smaller sprue on each side so that the metal pours a little bit slower might have done some good there. So we're basically hoping that this just washes out. I'm not that convinced that that's what's going to happen. So after a lot of messing around and chipping, etc., there's still a little bit of sand in there. I think that'll wash out in time. I'll give that another go. But this gives you some idea what we've got inside this piston. We've got two bosses there for the gudgeon pin. Fairly nice, the same shape as the inside of the core box. And this is still quite tapered, but we need to put this on a mandrel or on a boss after we've drilled the gudgeon pin, and clamp it down with the gudgeon pin against the chuck, and then machine the outside and put the ring journals in. That's the way to machine that. I'm not sure at this point whether I'm going to machine this, and there's no point machining this until we've got a cylinder with a main body with a cylinder that we can fit it to. And by that time we should have a cast iron piston too, so I'm probably not going to machine this one, but it's quite a straightforward job really, with a little jig or a fixture to do it. And as far as proof of concept goes, it's still quite thick there in the wall. And if we look here, it's still 1 inch 400 thou, 410 I think. If we go back here to 1 inch 250, it's got to have sort of that much meat off it. Which makes it quite thin on the back there in places. I think with some careful setup that will clean up, and it'll be quite a nice piston. If we look at that, there's still enough. It's going to be quite a thin wall by the time we're done. I'm wondering whether this needs a little bit of support on the back, whether that's something I really want to do or a path I want to go down. There are a couple of reasons why it might be a problem, and one is cleaning the sand out of the casting when we're done. It might be a whole lot nicer with a lip on the back just for strength, but I really don't think it's going to be a problem. So at this point, I'm probably going to call these patterns finished. I've still got to put a thread in here, quarter SAE thread in here to lift it out of the pattern. Core box is good. The only real issue here, the middle of the piston's pretty much in the right spot, in the middle of the gudgeon. That needs to be according to my drawing. Just having a look at this drawing, which is all getting a bit theoretical and probably not of much interest, but this piston needs to be 2 1/16 of an inch. Which has plenty of room on the end to clean up. If we clean that up and clean that up, it's going to be good. The gudgeon from the pin needs to be 1 1/8. And centre of the gudgeon to the rim here needs to be 1 1/8. If we have a look at that, it's not far out. It's pretty close to where it needs to be. And this piston skirt's quite thin, and it's quite thin for a reason if we have a look at the general arrangement, because the conrod runs quite close there to the skirt of the piston. So I'm not going to bother putting a ring around there. I'd sort of thought about it when I saw this and thought, gosh, that's close. It's not going to have a lot of metal left in here. But in iron, I think it's going to be fine. The other thing we need to check probably is the thickness in the bottom here for a set of rings. I think it's probably fairly important next time we do it, because we've got a groove down each side there, which is going to be a bit of a problem with this one, I think. So as a prototype and a proof of concept, we're really pretty confident and pretty keen to make that work. I think with a little bit of care and some thoughts about it, that's going to be pretty good. This shows you the amount of the size of the gate into this piston. It is probably this one a little bit porous on the bottom. I don't think it's going to clean. I think it's going to clean up fine, but I'm pretty pleased about that. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching it on Patreon, huge thanks. You've got no idea what it means. And to new patrons and new subscribers on YouTube, huge thanks. It makes projects like this possible, to be honest. And it's you guys that are making jobs like this possible. So that's what we've got at the end of this video. More soon. We're working on a rather core box for the body, and then we need to test the main casting in aluminium just the same as we've done here, and then they're ready to be sent away, and hopefully it won't be too long. I had hoped to have the castings back almost by now, but it's a huge job. Thanks for everything. Be kind to each other, and more soon.